This is a Chevy V8 engine, and this is an Audi front-wheel drive gearbox. We're kicking off a new project, and we're using this to stick them together. Let's get started. I just finished editing this video and I realized I didn't actually talk about what I'm making or what the project is at any point. I just started talking about the parts that I'm using to build it. So I'm going to make my own mid-engine car from the ground up. Yeah, I'm going to use some purchased components from other cars, things like that, but the chassis, suspension layout, a lot of the ergonomics, everything like that's going to be ground up designed. The components you're going to see in this video have been sitting around for quite a while, probably 6 to 12 months. The project or the goal of making this vehicle has been something I've had for over a decade. It all started back in college when I was making a little formula car. You're looking at the picture of the car then and the chassis as it sits today. I remember discussing that I wanted to make a mid-engine car powered by an LS engine from the ground up. And it was going to be the culmination of everything that I knew, all my fabrication skills, and it was going to be the ultimate test of what I could bring together and put together. At the time, I knew that I also didn't have all the fabrication tools, I didn't have the knowledge, and I didn't have the things that I wanted to accomplish it. So over the last decade, I've made sure to hit every single one of those bullet points along the way that it gives me the ability to make the vehicle that I've got in here. So, with that being said, let's finally get started and check out what we've got. So far, I've been able to wrangle together 4 parts for the mid-engine build. And this one was the trickiest of the 4, and I expect it to be the trickiest for the entire rest of the car. As dirty and as beat up as this thing looks, this is actually a really rare gearbox. It is a front-wheel drive, manual transmission, Audi 01X gearbox. It's got really favorable gearing. I'll throw up the gear table from Motomathics. Check out the link in the description below. It has output shafts really close to the bell housing as opposed to the transaxle that would come out of a Corvette and take those output shafts way over here. That makes a really long drivetrain. And the other part that makes this rare is that it is a front wheel drive only. Now, Audi has a bunch of all-wheel drive configurations where you'd have an output shaft out the rear of the gearbox over here, but those housings are designed differently than these housings. This one is designed to only send out torque through these output shafts here, as opposed to if I were to get an all-wheel drive transaxle and then take off the rear drive line. The strength isn't there to support 100% of the load transferring through these output shafts here. Now, the car that this came out of had a lot less power than what I expect out of the engine. However, there's a couple different people that actually drag race on them, and a lot of GT40 replicas out there running around with 600 to 700 horsepower on these gearboxes. A bit of a fun fact with this is that its predecessor, the 01E, which is even more rare of a gearbox, it was the prototype gearbox in the Gumpert Apollo development, which I'll throw a picture up right here. Okay, so now the engine. This is an LS 5.3 liter V8. Yes, it's a 5.3, so I know it's not a true LS. Technically, this is an LC9. It's got an aluminum block housing. It's a 4th generation V8 within the LS family, giving it the displacement on demand and the variable valve timing, I believe. I'll be deleting both of those, however. The reasons I picked this engine is because it makes the power I want it to make. It's available, it's lightweight, reliable, and there's a humongous aftermarket support for any kind of performance upgrades as well as engine control and management. In part of the selection process, I made sure that I could find a company to provide an engine adapter. This one is from Kennedy Engineered Products. It's a really beautiful piece of CNC billet aluminum. Not only do they provide the adapter, but they also help you out with the flywheel and clutch part of it as well. Now, this isn't a commercial for these guys or anything like that, but I do admire the work that they put into providing such detailed installation instructions as well as support. It's not often that you find somebody in the aftermarket community like this that's willing to stand behind their product like that. So that's really cool to see. Starting to align the plate to the engine, following the instructions. I've got to get this onto the engine first, make sure it's all good. Then it comes back off. Then we do flywheel, then adapter, and then transaxle onto the adapter plate. So let's keep it going. So far, everything lines up, no issues or troubles, which is awesome to see. All right, well, I just realized that I've got a stud over here, but I don't have an aligning stud over here. So adapter off, I gotta wait to go get those parts and then be back at it when they show up. Okay, so it's actually been a few days. I got the alignment dowels in, or at least the one that I was missing. I got it into the engine block. I got excited, already bolted it on there to test fit it. Everything's fine, but I wanted to show you how satisfying this is. So you align one dowel, the other dowel, and clicks right into place. So now that I know that it bolts up to the engine, no problem, I'm gonna go ahead and get it onto the transmission. I've gone ahead and installed the dowel on the adapter plate, or both of them. So now I need to get these to line up. One's gonna fall up there, the other one right there. Okay, perfect. Another snug fit, which is good. So, we get some hardware in there, and I'm gonna do the test fit up. Okay, so to get all the bolts in the adapter plate, they go through the backside of the transmission bell housing point, and you get this bolt diagram, Kennedy Engineering Supplies. So it's pretty simple. All you do is you line up. They have different lengths for all the bolts. You get them into position, and then you get the bolts in. I'm having a little bit of a problem getting this Allen bolt to sit into this hole. There's just not a whole lot of room back behind where that bolt seat is supposed to sit down. So what I'm gonna do is move forward with the task at hand. I've got everything else tightened down, and it's all, let's get in this shot, it's all looking good. So besides that one bolt, which I get figured out, I don't know if I need to notch the case, so just a tad bit right there, but I'll get that figured out. But now it's time to push the two together. So if you're looking at this and you're wondering why I am putting the two together without a flywheel or a clutch in place, it's because right now I'm just putting the two together so I can get a good look at it. I'm gonna go ahead and 3D scan it, pick up all my pickup points for the transmission, the engine. That way I can design a temporary stand to put the entire drivetrain package on for other just functionality stuff, wiring it, moving it around the shop, and also working on the exhaust system. So that's the plan. I can't even describe how exciting it is to see that coupled, I can't even speak. This thing coupled with this thing, it just looks too damn good to be true. So I'm gonna get a strap around here, dodge, or probably pick up just underneath this engine mount. It's got this support underneath the trans back here. Just make another tie point so I can get this to the engine hoist. That way it's supported kind of up to that high point there instead of putting all my load through that lift plate. But damn, this is so good. So much better to see it together than I could have pictured it. It's getting a little late today, so I'm going to kind of lift it back up, get the pallet underneath it to kind of support its weight, and then come back and get all my 3D scanning targets all over it and kick that process off. All right, so it has been a few days, but I'm back in the shop, back at getting this thing prepped for 3D scanning. I had a conversation with Kennedy Engineering about this bolt hole problem not lining up. They basically said it'd be no problem to go ahead and drill and tap my own hole in the existing hole kind of offset over here to the left. So my plan there is to machine a custom little transfer punch to the exact diameter that needs to be. That way I can locate that, get it on the mill, drill and tap that new hole in this adapter plate. I'll go ahead and do that work before I disassemble this, but it's not gonna stop 3D scanning or anything like that. To keep things in motion to get to 3D scanning, I've got to pull up the headers. I'm going to get out my 3D scanning locators, get them all over the engine and transmission, and I'm going to clean up this ratchet strap to kind of get it out of the way. Then I'll lift the whole thing up in the air and get going. So part of the reason that I'm actually taking off the headers instead of including them in the scan itself is that with my output flange from my transmission being right here, it's gonna have to go to its CV joint down to its shaft, and that exhaust is heading right for that area. So that means new headers are gonna be needed, but that's okay because I've got some really cool parts that I'm planning to put to use right there. So if you've seen some of my other videos, you've noticed a technique that I use to locate bolt holes. What I do is I take a piece of tape and I wrap it around the bolt. And what that does, that allows the 3D scanner to really easily pick up that bolt axis. So that's part of the prep work that I am doing right now. And I'm also going to use the tape to cover up the exhaust ports as well. They don't need to be open, as well as the intake that are open on top. So just to keep out dust and things like that. Okay, so the prep work is all done. I've got all my tape on all my bolts, I've got all my locators, and it is time to get scanning. Okay, so the 3D scanning is all completed. I'm going to let this post-process for a little bit. Then I'm going to do some cleanup to it, get it into SolidWorks, and start working on that stand I mentioned. Okay, so just a quick overview. I have a two-frame structure here. It picks up my front engine mounting points as well as my transmission mounting point. You're going to notice that this plate back here looks kind of crooked. This is a soft mount back here in the transmission. So that plane is exactly how that soft mount currently sits. So what I'm going to do is float these tubes a little bit when I'm actually putting it together, or float this piece of plate on these tubes rather, and then weld it in place once it settles down and becomes flat. Up here up front, I've got a pretty simple setup. I've got two standing pieces of tube, a plate that mounts that engine mount, or then a couple of pieces that are going to tie down and kind of bolt something through there. Putting it together like this is more along the lines of a traditional engine mount setup without any kind of isolators, that is. Because I'm not going to be running it or anything like that, I don't really need isolators. I just need something that's going to allow me to work on it and roll it around the shop. And speaking about rolling it around, I've got these 4 feet down here. They're holes, or these holes down here are pre-sized for some casters that I found online. They're arriving any day now. that pretty much wraps it up. Oh, I've got this small thin tube feature down here that kind of wraps around the base. The purpose of these thinner tubes down here is going to be to help square up the main legs of the frame itself, but I can also use it to put a piece of plywood on and either catch fluids or store hardware or components that I plan on putting on the machine, stuff like that. Oh, and this little guy up here, don't worry about that just yet. We'll talk about that in a future episode. Okay, so that's gonna wrap up this video. If you made it this far, thanks for sticking around. I know it was a long one, but this is a big project and it's something I've been wanting to do for a really, really long time. It's going to take quite a while, but I'm gonna bring you along and show you all the steps along the way. I've already got the next round of components getting ready for this. So some of those are arriving and I'm kind of working with them right now to figure that stuff out. So in the next video on this project, I'm gonna be making the stand and getting this thing mounted to it and finally off of this hoist, because we have something else pretty spicy to pick up with this and put it in a different car. So check that out on the next one, and thanks for watching.